Okay, so you'll notice that it's all kind of indented. You can buy a dogwood center maker, but considering it does nothing else, it's quite expensive. So unless you're making lots of these and it was for a particular wedding design that you're trying to do, I mean, that's the good way to do it. If someone asks you to make particular flowers for a special occasion and they're prepared to pay for the cake, then you can charge them a portion of the cost of your catalogue or vein or your mold. If you think you're going to make it again, then that's a bonus, isn't it? Otherwise, you have to kind of charge them for the equipment as well. Otherwise, it's going to cost you a lot of money to make. So my ball of paste is going to be 1 centimetre. Now, it's probably a good idea to watch this in case this doesn't go right to start with, and then have a go after. I've got a 24 gauge half length wire. You could use a 26. You've got more wires because each petal is individually wired as well, so that will make the center stem stronger. So if you've only got a 26, that's fine. And I'm just going to clamp a couple of mil from the top here and bend this over, but then I'm going to turn it on its side and I'm going to bend again. So you've got like a double hook. It looks like one of those metal bars that would have a bit of do not enter tape on it. So one normal hook and then turn it sideways and make a second hook on there as well. So you've got more for the paste to anchor onto. Now, a bit like a pancake, when you make this for the first time, quite often it sticks in the sieve and you have to kind of scrape it out to do the next one. But after a while, the sieve kind of starts to have a bit of, I don't know, it just conditions it, a bit of the fat in the paste, possibly a bit of the corn flour that you're using, and you'll find then it won't wedge itself in here and be difficult to get out. So I've got a little bit of corn flour just that's gone through the sieve, so hopefully the top edge of each of those pieces of wire is lightly coated. And then I put some corn flour onto the outside of my ball. We don't want it to stick in here, that's the reason. And then I'm just going to drop the ball into the sieve and press, but don't press it so that it goes like really, really tight, compacted onto the grid. Just enough so that you can start to see the sugar coming through. So there's a very, very slight, not even a chocolate button kind of dome. And then I'm going to just gently lever that off. Okay, so we've got texture on there now. Now that, with the texture on the top here, I'm now going to take the sides and bend them down. So you can see what's happening is the mesh markings are opening up and you're getting like this textured top edge. All right, let's just try a different camera angle to see if we can get you to see that a little bit more clearly. Can you see? It's nice and open and textured. So the side is not textured, it's just the top. The petals are going to be coming in round here anyway. So now I've got this little excess bit of paste here. So I need to carry on pinching and rolling until that stem comes off and you're just left with the textured ball. Drop that down onto the surface for a moment. So it's almost like a little button. And I'm going to light my candle because to help me with this, I'm going to burn in the wire so that it holds. Now, potentially you can actually do this before in advance, and then that way, you know, it's good and set in there. So I've got my flame going, and that second bent, that double bent hook is going to go into the flame, just the double bent hook end. Let it sit in there until it starts to glow, which is a good few seconds. Get your button ready, and in the cut back end of the button, very carefully, because you do not want to burn yourself, the heat should melt the sugar and enable you to push that in to about halfway. So it shouldn't poke out the top, but it should be wedged in enough to hold. See if we can get that closer. Now I've got a burnt edge here now, which I need to sort out. So I'm going to take my tape already and take down that part of the stem. So you've got to make sure this is cool enough. It is now, but if you're not careful, you can burn yourself on this. But to stop that black flaking off, because it's burnt the paper, we're just going to seal that in with a little twister tape. You don't need to do any more than that because we've got petals going on later on. So we'll practice with 2, maybe 3 of those, and then we'll move on to the petals. So the buds, I'm going to show you how to make the ones that are closed up still, ready to pop. They look a bit like hazelnuts. And they're quite nice. The texture of them looks quite nice. And they're divided into, you've got kind of a sharp edge here and then an indented line here. And it's almost like this is one petal that's about to peel open. And each dogwood flower has got 4 petals. So it's divided into 4. And you'll notice here that I've got the stem in the dark brown. But you could, if you wanted to, use your white and colour it green into brown, or you could use your Nile green and colour it brown later on. So for the bud, I would say we need about just under, well, it's just under 1.5 centimetres. We don't want to make them too huge. Give that a really good warm up. Make sure you haven't got any lumps and bumps in there. Interestingly, this was a block of paste that I had frozen in, and I've left it to defrost and it was fine, but I don't know what's happened. It's dried out quite badly, but then when you warm it up, it's really sticky. So that's probably the aftershock of having put it in the freezer. I'm going to take a 24 gauge or a 26 gauge half length wire and just put in just a single hook to this. Just going to work that a little bit more, get that into a nice round ball. This is where we've got to bring the candle back in again. So I'm just going to burn the hook. You could put this in with a little bit of glue and let it dry overnight, but this way we can work on it straight away as long as we take a bit of care. So I'm really making that glow, and it doesn't matter where you position it, just centrally and straight in, and probably to about halfway. Straight away tape so that you haven't got that burnt paper going everywhere, because it really does flake, and that can annoy because it's going to impact, it's going to go on, potentially go onto your work. Okay, so we'll just give that a little bit of a tape down just so it holds, and check that you haven't got the paper on your fingers. So just cleaning my fingers off. Now, when you come to shape, we would start by forming a point at the top. So a little bit of corn flour on my finger. I don't want to adjust this too much or mess about with it too much because it's only just attached, it's still wet, but it's easier to form this shape whilst it's on the wire. So I'm just finding the middle and just pinching a little peak out of the top, a bit like the top of a chive onion flower or bud. And then I'm going to go either side of this and just gently stroke between my finger and thumb, and I want to create like a little ridge down one side. I'm going to twist that, hopefully you can see. If not, I'll find a better angle in a moment. And we're going to turn it over. So the ridge is on this side. Now I'm turning it over to do the ridge on the other side. So finger and thumb and just pinch. You can support the bottom here just to stop the wire from pushing down any further. And we pinch a ridge. Go back to the top, just close that up if it's affecting you. Okay, so we've got a ridge both sides now. The ridge is up and down, so in here I'm going to divide. So I can use a cutting wheel, or if you want a knife. Cutting wheel is not on the list, so hopefully you've got something that you can use. Just support the back, and you can use, it's probably better to use the large end of this so that the knuckle doesn't push into your paste. So we're just going to start from the bottom, support the back and divide in half. So you've got your ridge up the center here, and then you've divided this part in half. And then we do the same on the other side, supporting, come right up to the top. If you come up and over on both sides, it will start to split that point in the center, and it makes it look like the petals are going to start to peel open. But to finish off the texture, I now want to draw lines, but not maybe as deeply as those lines I've just drawn, within those little segments. Okay, so it does look like a chive head, it really does. Work your way around. I'm going to press it because it's going a little bit flat in places. You can always add in a few more texture lines. Okay, so you've got a ridge that goes up and over, a divide indentation here and here, and then extra lines to finish the texturing. And don't worry if they don't really show at the moment. It's not until you colour that you start to notice them.
Hannah,
Yeah.
are we taping in green or in brown? Yeah.
You can go green or dark brown.
Okay, thank you.
Or white, it doesn't matter. We'll fix it all in a bit. Here's more whitish. They're all different. So if you've got green, use it. If you want brown, use it. If you want, you can go white, and we'll fix it later, because you can see on this one it's pinky, then it's kind of whitey pink, and then it's going green, and then it'll go dark brown as it comes down the stem. So it's like a varied. If you want me to make an overall decision for you, everything in white tape for the moment, but it really doesn't matter. Tell you what I do. but you don't need to follow me if you don't want to. I'm going to get these into white so that I can show you how to colour. We'll come on to the brown later. It's really difficult because not everyone's got the different shade colours of tape. So, you know, if you've just got the green, go with the green. If you've got white, go with white. If you don't care, just stick where you are. Doesn't matter. The colours of tape that I mostly use are these: the Nile green, the white, the dark brown, which is often like a twig brown, and then there's a pale brown as well. Like a leafy shade, this one here, but that's not for the dogwood. We're not using that on this spray. And pretty much those 4 shades will do everything in nature. If in doubt, use white because you can colour it.
Hannah, I've forgotten now, did you put the tape on?
So for the petal, we can use either the heart shape or the rose petal, but I'm going to use the rose petal and I'll show you how to trim it. And this would be for the leaves later on. Okay, so it's quite straightforward to make the dogwood petals. And all we're going to do is roll a piece of paste across a ridge. I'm going to use the fattest ridge there, just to make it really nice and easy. Warm up my paste so that it's hasn't got any bumps, any lumps. And then it's feeling a little bit sticky, so I'll put a little bit of corn flour and then add my paste to the board. Now, when you're doing this, it's probably a good idea to start right down the bottom so you've got a big thick entry point for your wire. And also the cutter I've got here is quite wide, so let's get most of the width ready so we know that that's going to fit the cutter, and then we can get the length. We want to roll nice and thin. Oops, it's sticking a little bit. So you want to be able to start to see the ridge in the center as white, so it should look a little bit translucent around the outside of the ridge. Pull that off as carefully as you can, turn it over so you can see the ridge. That's feeling a little bit sticky. With corn flour, and then position our cutter. This is the thickest part of the ridge, so that will take the start of the wire, which will be the bottom of the petal, and just make sure the ridge is in the center, press down. You've got the dogwood, and go ahead, you can cut that, centralize it before you cut. If you've got the heart, you centralize a bit like the dogwood through the center there. And then run your finger around the edge of whatever cutter you're using just to make sure you get a clean cut. And at this point, we can take out our little scissors. You could use your cutting wheel if you want to. And all I want to do, I don't want to take a very big chunk out of this, but I just want to take, so not the pointed end, this end here where you've got the rounded part, and just take a little triangle out of there. I'm going to, it's quite sharply cut, so I'm just going to take the corner off of both sides. Okay, and now you've got your shape. In with the actual dogwood cutter, there is a nip in the center, which is useful to have. So you don't want to cut that off. So if you've got the dogwood cutter, you don't need to do anything. If you've got the heart cutter, you don't need to do anything. Okay. Now the wire that's going to be the easiest to insert here would be the 28 gauge wire, and we don't need too much length, so I've cut these into thirds. Okay, so third length of 28 gauge wire, and that's going to go into the pointed end, not the end you've just snipped. Make sure your wire is nice and straight. Just put your finger and thumb either side of the ridge and insert the wire in the middle of the ridge. Now, as you're moving the wire up the stem, just push your finger and thumb together. So a little bit of a pinching action there that forces that wire to stay in the ridge in the center. And if you can get that up to here. Now at this point we can bring our poppy veiner in. Now you could texture this manually if you wanted to, and I can talk you through that in a moment. Just put a little bit of corn flour into the veiner. This is the DPM poppy veiner, and it's got the initials PP, so they're facing me, so that reads as P's. This bottom one, that is going to create the back, so I'm going to put the ridge face down onto the bottom in the center, as low down as I can. I don't want to go all the way down because there's no texture there, but quite low down, position quite low down. Okay, then we are going to close. Press quite firm to get the texture, but just watch out with the amount of wriggling you're doing because it can distort the shape and move the wire. And then we'll just release to reveal the texture on there. Okay, now if you were doing this manually without a veiner, then you could use the back of any veiner, simply sandwich and press. That will press down the ridge at the back a little way, and then if it's on your foam pad, you can use either a cutting wheel or a cocktail stick, or I've got the Dresden veining tool here which has got that sharp ridged end, and we can support the wire a little bit and press in those markings. And if you're doing this manually, what you would do is start in the center and you kind of fan outward from the wire, not so it's 90 degrees, but kind of just like a diagonal from the wire. So if you've got a veiner, you don't need to do this. Okay, but that's how you would do it. If you've got only a cocktail stick, then you can do the same, but you keep this cocktail stick fairly parallel. You're not sticking so you're dragging the point. It's more quite flat on there and drawing. So you can get your textures just using a cocktail stick. Okay. Now, once you've done that, we just need to use the bone modeling tool or the ball tool. So either one of these. I'm going to use the large end of my bone modeling tool, or if you've got a ball tool, you can use that. And all we want to do is pinch half on, half off the foam pad and get that to frill and thin round the edge. So you can start, if you want, at the top here, just coming into that part where we've cut, pressing down quite firm. You can see I've got the tool half on the edge of the petal, half on the foam pad, and then a bit of downward pressure. Try and let the wire do what it needs to, because if you hold on to that while you texture, then you might find that it will pull out. Okay, so now we've got the texture on there, and the last thing is to shape. So what I've done on here is I've taken my finger and thumb. This is the top, the front of the petal. My finger on there, thumb at the back, just curl it just a little bit. And then my finger and thumb are going to just run along the back here. So pressing this in a fraction, just to close up the wings of the petal. And down up here, my finger here is going to go in the middle. Now, if you've got the actual dogwood cutter, you've got that little dimp here, and using your finger, the dimp would go backward But with this little cutout piece, we can just encourage the whole petal to just think in the center. Okay. I show you there, you can see that it's turned down in the middle. I'll change camera view for you as well. Okay, so this is the front. Let's get rid of this. You've got a little curve back, and then here I've just curled it in the center, so you've got that little indentation or curl back. And we're going to do 4 per flower. And I would recommend, let's have a go at making 4. Well, so we can complete 1 flower. So the leaves, we're going to use a lime green shade of paste, a small party sausage amount. Don't work with too much leaf colour or paste, because it'll just dry out each time. So just roll out what you need. So this is coming out a little bit larger than I need, but I may, because that ridge is quite thick, as it goes up it stays thick, might actually be able to get 2 leaves out of this. So we'll see, although it has distorted a little bit coming out of the cutter. So the leaves themselves on the dogwood can be different shapes, different sizes, not shapes. These are all roughly similar, but you do get small and big ones. So if you've got a selection of ruscus leaf cutters, then you can cut different size ones out. They look quite nice, especially the small ones. They're quite nice on the behind the bud. So I've just got a smaller cutter here. My suggestion here is that we make just three leaves. If you're doing the garland, though, you are going to need more than that. But just from a how do you make that point of view and a practice, if you're just making the 1 dogwood a day, then you can just make 3 leaves, just so you've got the texture, the practice of the texture down. And a bit of a production line, you could cut your shapes and put them under a piece of plastic so that they don't dry out. I'm just going to get a medium shaped one as well. If you've got a slightly wider cutter than this, that's fine. I mean, the varieties of dogwood do differ, so you can use fatter ones if you want. A good set of cutters is the dahlia. The petals are slightly wider, so you can get wider cutters for this. We're using 28 gauge wires cut into 3. So we'll just push that through. The reason I only suggest make 3 is because we have got quite a bit to do in terms of not so much the colour, but putting it together, taping side of things, because we want a twiggy, gnarly surface or stem. So I'm just inserting my wires. And then we'll put this onto a foam pad to texture. I'll just bring my foam pad in. Drop those leaves on. If we put the ridge face down. Now here, because we're not using a vein now, you might not like the idea of your ridge showing. So either put them through the veined section of the poppy veiner, and then we can add to the texture. Or if you feel that that is going to cause you a bit of confusion, use the back of the veiner, because that will just press the whole thing down. It widens the leaf a little bit, but it also flattens the ridge a fraction. Okay, so you can use the back of any veiner to do that. And just check that you have actually got it with the ridge facing down the not so nice side down, basically. So you can use your veining tool or a cocktail stick for this. I'll just show you on the veining tool. So the sharp edge, not the flatter side, the sharp edge. Be careful when you're working with this because you don't want to cut through to the wire. But first of all, we need to do a central vein line. And then your texture is going to come off the stem at different points up, but with a bit of a curve. So we're drawing lines up to the edge. And they don't have to be exactly aligned opposite each other as you come up. Okay, I feel like I want to do another one in there because it looks a little bit wide. If you've got a cocktail stick instead, then just rest it so it's almost parallel. So we don't want too much of a tear. We don't have to have this that upright. It's just enough so that when we lay and draw, we get a good texture. And then again, you're going to work one side of the leaf, curving as you do, next side of the leaf. When you press down in the middle, be careful because it does tend to make a little indentation. So you can achieve the same thing just by using your cocktail stick. You just do the last one, drawing the line down to the tip. Just not pressing too hard because we do not want the wire to cut through. The wire is showing a little bit on here. I might have to redo this one because the wire is definitely showing. And then the last bit is to thin the edges. They're not overly ruffled, so we can use the large end of the bone modeling tool and just draw along the edge. This will take out some of the texture right at the very edge of the petal or leaf. Half on, half off the foam pad so that you're pinching just the edge. I'm going to curl this in the same way as we did for the petal, using my finger and thumb behind the leaf to close it up a little bit, and then just curling it round. I feel like that wants to be bent just a little bit more. When you do this bit, when you close it up, just be careful because sometimes you can pull it off the wire by mistake. So that is your leaf. They're really, really basic. Just showing you this, the actual. And can you see? They're not very, very textured. A little bit curved, a little bit closed up in the center. I'm going to start with my pink. The reason for that is because I don't want to have green and then try and colour things that have got a bit of green on there with the pink. So that means that I'm working on my petals first, okay? And then I'm going to work on my centres, buds, or the buds next, and then the centres. So I've got a selection of brushes here, but you can actually use just the same brush for everything. You just need to clean off in between. And if you have got lots of excess colour, the best way to clean is just to run your brush to and fro on a piece of tissue to take the worst of the colour off, and then you can work on using the same brush without washing in between. But normally you'd put to wash and dry overnight, little dot of washing up liquids, a little bit of moisture on the brush, and then clean the brush, rinse it through until there's no colour coming off. Reshape the brush, slightly dry it, and let it set up, dry upside down. Okay, so I'm going to use a combination of my plum and fuchsia pink. And when you look at the screen that I was just sharing, just put that back on for a moment, you can see that the pink is concentrated in the center here, slightly shorter, but there's a white tip and a white center. So I'm going to try and go for something a little bit like this. It does make them look quite sweetie-like. And that's why I put the plum in there, because I find the fuchsia pink is too strong, too bright on its own. So just make sure that you're working on the front of your flower, support the back, and then leaving a gap. This is very unusual because normally we dust from the outside edge in, which we can't do this at this point because we want it white. Make sure the colour's worked into your brush, and then leave a gap and start to colour in the centre. So when you look at the pictures that I was showing you earlier, just Googling dogwood petals or dogwood flowers, some of them are just very lightly coloured and others are quite strongly coloured. So depending on how the colour comes out, you can decide when you want to stop, but definitely need to support. I'm going a little bit longer on the outside. Here's a bit shorter because I want this part to remain fairly white. And with the best will in the world, however neat you are with your dusting, some of that excess pink will go into the areas where perhaps you don't want it. So if you've got like a little puffer, something like a lens puffer, a camera lens puffer, that just you can squeeze and it puffs air, then that can help you get the excess air off before you start to colour with your greens. But we're only going to put a little bit of green on here, so it shouldn't cause us too much trouble. Just going to get some colour to the edge there. So just focusing that in the centre. And if you need to, you can go again. If you find your colours not taking particularly well, then what you can do is at this point, steam the petal so that it sets this colour. But also once it's set, once it's dry again, probably after 10 minutes or so, when you dust again, it will take a bit more. And you'll be able to get some depth to your shading. Now, I'm not going to colour the back, but you could if you wanted to. I'm just going to support, I'll just show you, just very, very lightly, as if it's showing through from the front. So it's definitely not strongly shaded at the back. Okay, so that's our little side to side kind of streak in the centre. This area is left clear. This area is left clear. Might want just to come up here just a fraction more. Here, if you wanted to, you could catch from the outside edge in for all the colour, but leaving that very top part unshaded. Just take care as well, because your petal is still a bit wet. You're putting stress on the shape on the wire, so you've got to have that finger supporting behind. So that gives you just a subtle colour, and let's go back to this here. So you can definitely go stronger if you wanted to. And now all I'm going to do is catch the tip and the very base with a bit of lime green, which is something I like to do because I think it looks more realistic. So I'm just going to take my, this is my dusting brush that I use for green. I'm going to take a little bit of yellow and a little bit of my moss green, because the moss green is quite bluey. We want this limey. So we'll work the colour into the brush, and here I'm just going to take a little bit onto the base and up, just catching the bottom edge as you do this. Okay, if you want to, you can do a little bit on the back as well. So of course, if you're only doing white flowers, that's all you need to do is a little bit of moss green, lemon yellow. Put some at the top edge here, and I'm going to come in right in here and just draw. I don't want to come onto the pink because it'll go brown, but just draw a little bit into there for definition. Okay, so that's your petal, pink in the center, little wash of a little brush of the lime shade top and bottom. So we do that to all the petals. Now once you've done that, we could actually just go on to the buds, and I'm just going to come back. I'm just going to find my bud. No, can't find it. That's just, I was going to just show you an illustration of that, but I'll find it in a moment. Because we're colouring pink, then yes, of course, there's going to be a little bit of pink on here. So for me, I want to come in and catch the pink just short of the top tip all the way around, because of course the top was white, wasn't it? Top edge is white. So we go all the way around, and because you've got this nice texture on there, we can be subtle. It doesn't have to be really, really strong colour. So just catching it as a blush, just short or just down from the tip. And if you remember, the bottom here was white. We could just draw this down just a little bit more, maybe. I don't want to go too dark. And then the base here, like before, but maybe a little bit more, because this is the start of a maturing bud. And possibly your smaller buds be either whiter or more green, just at the base. So that would be your bud. Moving on to the center, that's all lime green, so that's easy to work out. We're just going to take your brush and add your lime green shade. Just kind of dot it on. Just be careful if you're going upward in any way, even though we've burnt this paste onto the stem, it could still come off, so we'll just have to be a bit gentle. Just work that color. All of a sudden, even the faintest of texture is going to show. Work that in. And around. And this same green is going to be used to colour the leaves, because they haven't really got much difference in shading. They just seem to be quite monotone green. But it is a good suggestion to colour all your petals first, and then do all your buds, then do all your centres, and then all your leaves. And that way you're working with your pink first, and it doesn't, green isn't going to go over areas that need to be pink and turn them brown. And this here, I'm just supporting the back of the leaf. These, of course, are quite wet still, and we just want to get some of that shading on there all over. Now, if you want to, because we've got the white tape, the beauty of this is that we can actually turn this a little bit green, and then we can over tape in the dark brown. I'll show you what I mean. To do a little bit of colour on the back as well, but just to show you a leaf that hasn't been coloured, you can see there is a difference. I've got excess green petal dust on my finger, and if I roll my finger up and down that stem, taking care not to break the leaf or catch the leaf, my stem can go a little bit green. And then you can also, if you wanted to, just catch a little bit of the spring green up there, because the rest of it's going to be dark brown, but as these things are growing, these elements are growing, you've got spring new growth showing. You don't need to colour the petals, because at the moment we haven't put any tape on those. Okay, so to put this together, I'm going to assemble my dogwood flower. They're not roses. Dogwood rose is something completely different. Oh, and I've got to find my tape end for that. Oh no. Is that it? going to have to break into it because I can't find it. It's disappeared. Doesn't matter, we can use this. We just need to pull it off and split it. Okay. So first things first, take each petal, clamp the tweezer right up where the sugar is, and then gently bend each of the wires backwards. It just helps to be able to insert the petals neatly around your center that you made earlier. So it's kind of a 90-degree angle. Then take your center that you've made, give the tape a really good stretch. It should double in length. And then we're going to position 2 petals directly opposite, right underneath. So it's not down here, it's right up underneath the chin of your center. So we can take the first petal, pop that on, give it 1 twist of tape down a bit lower, just so that it's out of the way and we haven't got anything really thick going on there. Take your next one and position it directly opposite. Now, when you do this, the only thing you've got to watch out for is if it's really open and horizontal like this, then you'll find that when you try to put all of these flowers together, you've got no give at all. So if that's causing you a bit of restriction, bring the petal down the stem of the center just a little bit so that you can then move this up at an angle. Okay, and I'll do the same with this one while I can. I just need to pull it down a fraction. So maybe by a mil, just so that you've got this better angle. So that's the 2 petals in. Then we take the 3rd petal, position that in the same place, slightly down that stem if it's going to cause you a problem. You just don't want everything really flat. All these petals don't want to be totally flat. And then do the last one. So the last 2 that go directly opposite each other are slightly behind. Okay, so you've got this kind of look. Let's bring that one up a fraction. Make sure all the wires are facing the same direction, not spiraling the main stem. And you can either break off at this point or hold on to everything nice and firm, stretch your tape and tape up to the top. So you then can't see any wire. Just watch out because this has a tendency to twist. And straightening the wires off, I can now tape down, probably be about 2-3 inches. Okay. Now on here, I've got a little bit of green and yellow on my fingers. I can bring some of that color, my petal dust, onto my stem. Okay, so that's how you color it. When you want something that's slightly different to the shade of tape. And then we're going to be bringing the brown tape in when we put all this together. So looking at the top, I've now got my little dogwood flower. Okay. No, kind of. It's going to make those petals skew with because I think it looks nicer. So once you put your flower together, you've got 3 leaves. So let's put 2 of the leaves on our main flower. So I'm just going to bend again at an angle. And the 3rd one will go on the bud, but we can bend this one in advance. And this is where our dark brown tape will come in. Take a little bit of that, stretch it. Start with your flower the brown tape is going to come down probably after about 2 centimeters. Give it one twist on there and then twist your tape around so you get like a twiddle, and carry on wrapping that round. Keep the twiddle in the same position and then flatten your tape out and come down the stem a little way. So what you're doing is thickening and creating a little kind of node, nodule, lump, bump, whatever you want to call that. So you're probably thinking, well, where have I got that from? Let me show you the picture again. Can you see here and here and here? Yeah, so they're kind of, we're not going to go this mad, but they're on there. And that's how you create them. I like little nodes. So I'm going to come down a couple of centimeters, and now I can add in a leaf. So I'll put one in. We could put one, come down a little bit further, put one in on the other side. So you could have a small one, a medium one, whatever you would like. And then just after the leaf, maybe we can do another one of these nodes. So stretching the tape, twisting maybe 2-3 times, a bit like when you make an ivy tendril. So we've twisted it, and now where it is horizontally, I'm just going to wind that around the main stem. We get back to flat tape and we continue taping down. And you've got 2 little nodules. We started off with white tape. We used the petal dust to get a moss green, lemon yellow, kind of lime green shade. Then we've added in the dark brown, made a node, taped in a leaf, come down a little bit further, tape in another leaf, make another node. And then I just finished using this little bit of tape up. I'm not going to tape all the way down the wire because I want to add in a bud. I'm just going to show you the bud because that's quite straightforward. Very similar preparation now for the bud and leaf. I can add in, I've got a little bit of petal dust, lemon yellow, moss green on there. I can make this tape a little bit darker green. And you can repeat what you've just done on the stem for the main flower. So this will just be redemming. My tape, I store it in a bag to stop it from drying out. But what happens is that it becomes quite sticky, and then you can't find the end, just like sellotape then. So stretching. Don't worry that it's a rough cut edge, that adds to it. So we're going to start probably about 1.5 centimeters from the bud. Get that twisted on. Immediately I'm going to twiddle, so turn it around itself. If you're right-handed, you might want to do this the other way because you might want to control it. I'm left-handed. And then now I've twiddled that. If you just get that spiraled piece of tape to wrap around as it's coming down. If you feel there's too much, then you can always unravel your tape when you're ready to go on with just a flat piece of tape. Coming down the stem a little way, introducing my single leaf, which could be the smallest one you've got. Get the leaf attached. And once again, twist your tape. Doesn't have to be as many times. Wrap it around, tape down. Rough, mucky taping works perfectly for this. So if you're doing the garland, this is the stage where, or the wreath, this is a stage where you would stop. But if you wanted to finish off your arrangement, once you've got all your pieces together, it's quite nice if these are a little bit bent. And then you can decide how you want this to show. So we could have, I think, just the bud can connect in here. And I'm going to leave quite a long length of stem and connect about here. And where that join is, again, we could create another node if we wanted to. If you don't want to spend the time doing those nodes, just don't worry, don't do them. It's not essential. It's just something that identifies it as a dogwood. So here, where it's joined, I'm going to twist. So this could be a longer one. And then as what looks like a length of string, we line it up so that it wraps around coming down. So it doesn't fully overlap. It kind of, as you wrap round, it comes down the stem, but tightly. And then we go on down the stem. And once you've got, this looks like it's just been picked off a tree now, which in theory would go into a vase, but you could certainly add more to this. So there you have your dogwood bud foliage with gnarled branch stems.